She started as a documentary filmmaker, and then she's done features, corporate films. She's done very interesting documentaries, I heard. So definitely, as an aspiring filmmaker too, I would like to know the kind of journey you have went through. Because the way, how did you find film as your medium? Like, how was that journey? Finding your form, your medium.
Good evening, everybody. Actually, it was all a lot of stumbling to come to where I was, I think, because my parents were not the typical ordinary people. In that sense, my mother she kept saying, either engineer and doctor, one of the two respectable professions apparently. But none of us were interested in that. So, accidentally I got into advertising because I liked writing captions and all that. Of course, I didn't want to think of literature to write because my father was so big by then. We always knew we'd be under his shadow or would be compared to him. So that comparison is very scary, especially when he's as big a literature as him. So I started working in an ad agency, and then in the due course I started my own ad agency as well. And in that time there was one particular, like Karnataka Social Forestry Department had a nature camp for children for 2 days. So they said, can you shoot it? And at that point it was VHS. I don't know, the present generation won't even know what it is, I'm sure. So VHS camera and all that. So we took that and shot for 2 days, stayed with children and, recorded the activities and made a script out of it. And from then on, I said I really liked the medium. So I started making corporate films, but it never gave me happiness because corporate films was, of course, a lot of money. But it was basically doing what they wanted. It's a, self-glorification, corporate films which they had to present, they had to do it. So I used to do it just for the money. At one fine day, I saw a small article in the newspaper about one folk singer called Fakirava Gudisagar, and she was trying to sell her medal and this thing to buy provision for a house. So I was very touched by that. She was, recognized by the state government and won an award, but she was still suffering to meet, even to feel herself. So I decided I'll do some documentary on her, and then I started. Actually, it became 1 to 7 women, and it was basically on folk singers. So, but then this was not given, and nobody gave me money for that. So when I tried to, make it and then sell it, it usually went lesser than what we have spent on it. So again, continuing corporate films, robbing from the rich and doing what I loved, basically. That was it. Yeah. Yeah, and then the film happened when I was doing these corporates and documentaries. Suddenly one of my friends came down from Dubai and said, why don't we make a film? So we decided my father's novel, which you saw this thing. And 4 of us pulled in money and made the film. So it was very beautiful and an innocent journey, I would say, actually. When you come into the film much later, you get corrupted in terms of what to do, and you get slaughtered as an art filmmaker or as a commercial filmmaker. So you try to break your own boundaries every time. And you make mistakes, but you also make some good films on the way. So it continues, yeah.
So, that was one thing I wanted to ask. What do you place yourself?
Sorry?
In the sense, what do you place maybe in the industry or in the filmmaking? What do you place? Because you have done commercial films, you've done different films, independent films, you have done documentaries. So,
What do I like, you're asking?
What do you like, or how do you place yourself in this?
I would hopefully say good filmmaker, but even that is very questionable because sometimes as I told you, we end up making mistakes because you'd be under a lot of, filmmaking is not just like a writer who's dependent on himself and a paper or a computer or, things like that. So there's a lot of, we are dependent on producers sometimes. The project might not get executed the way we want, but I would love to say my role I like best is to be producing myself and making my own films. Then is when I'm true to the content and true to the film, honest to what I want. Otherwise it becomes very difficult. Not that I've been offered many films to be made, like remake films or even including some, because they have some stars, dates, make a film. I go completely blank then. I really can't do it or cater to a particular person or anything. If I have a subject or Or if I feel the subject suits them, then I can probably, create from scratch a story. Otherwise, it gets very difficult. So, in fact, the last film I made is called Summer Holidays, which I made in English and Kannada. It was a beautiful experience because I worked with 4-5 children. And because I believe I lost my innocence long back, I'm not a child anymore. So when we make English films, when we make children's film, we always dumb it down. I mean, we think it's funny, which children don't think it's funny. And we don't think of them as young adults. We think them as dumber version of ourselves. So I, in fact, made the children sit with me and told them, this is the scene I want. Are you okay? And they said, no way. Sometimes yes, sometimes they said, no, we don't do scenes like this, or we wouldn't have this kind of situation in our lives, or including dialogues. So I told them, this is what I want to say it in your own line. So it came out very honest film. It might not be a great film, but it's very honest to that age group. So I would like to say, whatever it is, you make an honest effort at whatever we do. Yeah.
So that is the next film which is going to be released.
On August 3rd, yeah.
In August, yeah. So, you have been working in the industry, so it's personally I feel it's very difficult for a filmmaker to survive in the particular political scenario, and you're a woman too. So how does that work?
No, I've said this many times. It's not just the actors, actresses who get hit upon actually. Women do also, and including producers. They find this kind of camaraderie or a bond with a man, for instance. If you have a bound script, you go and say, okay, this is a bound script, I'd like to have a reading to you, or you could read it yourself. But more than that, more things happen behind the scenes, like you go to a bar or drink. And I'm a single parent, so I generally don't get time. I come from the corporate world again, so I'm very fixed about my timings. So it gets very difficult for me to do all that. So I would refuse to, and producers told me, what are you wearing a burqa and sitting at home? I said, if you want a film, come. You want anything else, go ahead. I'm not interested. So these kind of things happen all the time, because you are supposed to socialize more than actually what professionalism you have on paper, or what you have shown for yourself with the films you have done. So this gets very difficult, but I'm okay, because what I think is every filmmaker, every actor, anybody in the film industry, because it's not a 9-to-5 job, because it doesn't have a pension pay plan, nothing, I think you should have an alternative career, or some kind of job which you love or whatever, so that you're not solely dependent on films and the whimsical fancies of the producers. Because then you're desperate. You want to make, of course, even without that, I run a resort solely for children, just to keep my bills paying. But apart from that, the passion is there, you have a story, and you start saying, okay, it's been 2 years, I haven't made a film. So the jitteriness starts. But nowadays I've calmed down. I said, it doesn't matter. If I don't do a film, it is not going to end. And nobody, it doesn't matter. It's just my own passion which has to be satisfied. So it's okay if it takes time, or if it doesn't happen at all. You have to have an alternative career, so you're not dependent on so many other things, like the casting couch or this and anything. Especially now, all the women especially are educated and they're smart, so they're very enterprising. So once you have that in place, the fame and that is secondary. I mean, it will happen if you're talented, if but the desperation is what leads to all that, I think.
It takes time, you said, right? I mean, even if it takes time, it's okay.
For an actress, maybe not. but for a director, yes.
But why is that time? That crisis we are undergoing is, it's difficult, right? How to address that issue in the industry.
No, unless a lot of professionals come into the industry and not just people with money, this will continue. I think professionals who respect, I'm not saying corporate, because that's another ballgame altogether. Professionals or people passionate about filmmaking come into it, who can gauge a film. And I've seen so many wonderful films being made, including from Girish Kasaroli to whoever, but the marketing, they don't spend any money at all. So it doesn't reach the people. It, of course, goes to festivals and all that. But finally, if it reaches, there is, as I was just telling earlier, It's not just people who are there just for commercial films. There are a complete set of people who are niche audience, who like quality films, who like to see meaningful cinema. What we have to do, unlike this just clubs, film society clubs we have, which is hardly nobody charges any money. So they come and they give their 2 bit of advice. You should have made that, you should have made the film like this. And of course it's very important for as a filmmaker to be taking opinions. But how do you make money? So maybe there should be a network in every city which like-minded people are there, and immediately instead of spending lakhs together on promoting and putting posters on the roadside and all that, which most filmmakers of serious filmmakers can't afford, maybe that network should be immediately the messages in email should go saying that this film is coming. We are doing this in personal basis. Personal this thing we WhatsApping, saying okay, spread it. But there's whole other people who are not in your network who also might like good cinema. So maybe we should do that. Some kind of concrete effort from some person maybe should be done, I think.
Another parallel way of distribution.
Yeah, because when last film I made, the Karya Kanvita, for instance, we had made a budget of 40 lakhs something. It was very hard, but when I went to the distributor, he said another 10 lakhs at least minimum for publicity. And I was out by the time, but I didn't have any money by the time. But we did have shows, ticketed shows, and it got back its money. But at the same time, it was very difficult. See, in the first film, we can run around to all the festivals, run around to each and everybody. 2 people call you, you go and show the film, they praise it, you love it. But after 20 years, 15 years, it gets very tiring. You can't have the same energy and the kind of, without money especially. Because you have to run a family, you have to pay the bills, you have so many commitments. So it becomes very difficult. So maybe a group like this, somebody starts, it'd be very interesting all over India. You can do that, I think.
It begins from the documentary which you made about the natural camp of the students, and then you have done that feature film and corporate films, a lot of them, and they have won awards, national, state and international awards. So what do you think? How did that form evolve while in the process? As a filmmaker, how do you view yourself when you come to the next film which is going to be released in August, a children's film?
As I told you, I hope I'm as innocent as my first film when I make a film. That will be the beauty. In fact, we had constituted an award in my father's name for debut directors across India, because I always feel the first film is the most honest film. Somehow you do it with no boundary of saying, okay, I'm going to do a commercial film, or I'm going to make an art film, I'm going to do this. With no preconceived notion. You love the subject and you take it and you do it with utmost sincerity, I think. So I hope every film I'm like that, but it's very difficult you're not, because it's so many things are already in your mind. So, but at the same time, still again, now my next film I was planning to do on a short story based on my father. It's between a Dalit boy and a upper caste girl. And it's a very contemporary thing, though it's written 30 years back. So this is very amazing, the way our country is going. It's not moving forward at all, I think, in that sense, because everything is getting worse and worse. Just now when I saw this clip, I remembered my first film, Deviri, the kind of dialogues are there in that, bastard and everything is there. It had a U certificate. But now if you make the same film, it's going to be cut or it's going to be given an A certificate. Then they understood that the language particularly was needed. The words were needed to that kind of society, the slum they were living in, and the kind of hardship and the challenges the heroine faces. But now none of that will be considered. We are supposed to make it very, pious and, very clean. But our mind is getting more and more dirty and corrupted. Our society is getting more and more corrupted. We are getting more and more closed up. But apparently, it's open up. We are liberated. We are not, actually. That's what I find very ironical, actually. From what you see, I was talking when my father or Anumurthy wrote anti-biomedical novels, or even make Katashraddha and all that. It was accepted. Nobody threatened them. Of course, they had discussions, they had arguments about the creative differences, all that. But nobody, unlike now, your own Harish or Perumal Murugan or my sister is this thing. And it's like there's no sign of intolerance is becoming to horrible levels, I would say.
So, it's a terrible situation. We are undergoing. We are going through both political and for you it's personal, and it's personal for everyone. What do you think, like, as an artist, what can we do at the end of the day? Like, there is state censorship happening. All the films are, under the threat. If you are trying to, communicate something that that certain people doesn't want to, then your work is not going to be screened in festivals. Even in festivals where before we didn't actually want censor certificates. So what do you think? What strategy can be used?
Absolutely, there's a lot of effort to being silenced extremely by the right-wing forces in the whole country, and I think the effort is basically see what happened. I think also there's no unity amongst us, amongst not just the filmmakers of fraternity, what I'm talking, as an entire, any kind of causes. For instance, Prasanna, who does called a Desi products, who's been fighting against GST in Karnataka. When he fights, earlier you would find only him and his own team fighting in front of town hall, protesting and all. But in fact, if everybody goes from every strata of society, like writers go on, farmers go on, filmmakers go on, become a unity. United, we put up a united front. Maybe the voice will be heard much more larger. Then we won't get isolated, like my sister, I would say, who being alone fighting for some causes. If we all fight, all of us are united, maybe the cause will get much more heard, noticed, and maybe the effect will take place in retaliation. So that's the problem,
So I think let's open to the audience also. Yes.
Hello, Kavitha ma'am. Namaste.
Namaste.
Happy to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
And I have a part A, part B, and part C question. Sorry, if I wouldn't get another.
I have only 15 minutes. I have to catch the flight. Just we're in a very tight schedule.
Primarily, how is life for Kavitha Lankesh, the director, after the demise of Gauri Lankesh?
Yeah.
And how is life for Kavitha Lankesh, the sister, post the demise of Gauri Lankesh? Second, ma'am, very, very important. I have a message for Prakash Raj through you.
Okay.
Take a bow, take a salute from Geeta, because he had shown an exemplary example of what an artist should be when a fellow citizen is injured. Because we have a spineless ballet and a spineless valiant here who are silent when they stand with the perpetrator. Then they have to stand with the victim. Salute to Prakash Raj.
Yeah, I was hoping one of the things I won't cry, but deeper. Yeah, it's been very lonely. It's been painful without my sister, but at the same time, there's some very minimum solace with the investigation that's been going on, and they're reaching to a kind of a conclusion, so I'm happy about that. There's some justice being done. But otherwise, personally, it's been a very lonely journey, painful journey, because I'm sorry, she would read all my scripts and give me feedbacks, and she would literally live with us half the time, with me and my daughter. So that sense of loneliness can't be, it takes time. Yeah. So I'll keep it short. Yeah.
Since you are the illustrious daughter of an illustrious dad, I am asking this.
Yeah. Sorry, where are you? Yeah.
Here.
Here. Oh, okay, sorry. Yes.
Sir, I have heard of the Latin American documentary in which the Hour of the Furnaces, the director used camera as a gun, sort of gun. Do you endorse the view that an activist film director is a guerrilla fighter. Guerrilla fighter. Do you endorse that view? So every artist, every activist, film director is sort of employing guerrilla warfare against all atrocities. Take the case of lynching.
No, I don't like the idea of violence through that to any measure, any kind of violent.
It is an activist.
Yes. Activist did not mean violent way of doing it. In fact, my sister, when everybody called her a moist herself or Naxalite, she was doing the other way around. She was actually making them leave their arms and come back to the normal civilized society. But half the people, the media is so half-assed, half-baked generation. They don't read beyond the thing. If you see her trolling what they've done, she deserved the death. She was a Naxalite sympathizer. She was a Naxalite. This is what happens. So I would completely disagree. I think she fought, or even as a filmmaker or a responsible citizen myself, I would say things don't work with violence or with gun. Like you're saying about lynching, it's just become such a big scare in the whole country right now. Lynching.
Do you think that there is an emergency in disguise?
It's heading there, I think, in a way. I think we're all heading there.
Another generic question regarding filmmaking. It is said by some Western pro-market critics that fiction is dead, cinema is dead. A cinephile like me would rather be a necrophile, means a dead body lover. What is your take on it? I would rather be a dead body lover if cinema is dead.
Yeah, I would feel that too, because as I told you, we have this craving for cinema to see and to make and to be involved in it. I told you after 1 year, if I don't make a film or if I'm not in the process of writing, or there's a hope that we'll make it because of kind of uncertainties with the producers. So like right now, somebody has said we'll make a film on that upper caste girl and this, and I was so caught up with it, and I've got a team, we started discussing, and suddenly right now he's been gone silent, the producer. So now I'm wondering, do I make it without him? Where do I get the sources? So it's a constant thing, which is, if it's a passion, it keeps, once the film is, whether I've always said it's a flop or a hit or whatever it does, this thing, you again start thinking of making a film. So there's an obsession for making films in whatever capacity, and yes, I would say agree with it.
One more last question. Suppose there is a filmless world. You are living in a filmless world. What would you have done in a cinema-less world as an activist?
I think there's, of course, if there is a cinema-less world, of course, there are other platforms which you would, because basically cinema, I'm a writer in terms of advertising or even my own script, so that could be converted to a story. Maybe there's always communication. Cinema is also, for me, a communication with the audience. So I would communicate whatever way I want to, whatever. But since there is a platform already that exists, and now everybody with a phone is a cinema filmmaker. So I think there's, it's to imagine that world is a little difficult for me too, but yes. Yeah.
Yes, here.
Hello. Being as a filmmaker, how do you see the future of cinema in India?
It's one way it's very vibrant. At the same time, there's a death for the big celluloid, I think, because of the whole digital market, which has opened up so much, and the social media, Netflix, and those kind of everything. So it's different kind of cinema will soon come in, I think, which you can, maybe go into the halls. I was just seeing the logistics of releasing a film. I'm releasing my latest film in across India, and it's because the single screen, there's a death of single screens and only the multiplexes. The kind of sharing basis, the producer, the least one who gets money. The distributor gets the money, the theater owners are fixed, they get the money. So finally the producer is getting some 30% in the first week, 20% in the second week. So it's just imagine, how do you make money as a producer? Everybody else is in the film industry. The actors are paid very well, so they are making money. Finally, the producer, and it's very difficult proposition. So the dynamics have to change somehow, I think. Otherwise, it's very difficult to release a film and hope unless it's a big Bollywood or big Rajinikanth film, which is released all over. It's for an independent filmmaker, the calculation if we do, I mean, because I'm also an enterprising entrepreneur first and a businesswoman. I have to see how to get the money back. Then you realize this is the whole scene. 1,500 seater in a big theater would get so much money and you'd pay weekly rent. But now it's daily show per show kind of thing. So it's a very expensive proposition. And the first loser is a producer. Then how will the producer survive? They'll become an extinct, extinct. Then how do you make a film? So these kind of logistics. So I think there'll be different dynamics which will come into filmmaking soon, which even including the
but earlier was a studio system.
Yeah.
And so directors got employed in studios like Napu Studio, any other studio.
Yeah.
So that time there was no concept of that kind of independent films.
Yeah.
But don't you think the studio system was better than making the independent films because of the distribution and the revenue generation in terms of that?
No, I don't know if anybody wants to be employed as a director now in the present generation that way. The whole idea of filmmaking is also the love of it is the erratic entire thing about the timings, you don't be an employed bank kind of person somehow. So the stability I know what you're saying if you're employed by a studio, but also the stability is not one is looking for if you come to be a filmmaker, I would say. No.
I was talking about the internal distribution and the revenue generation and the marketing. That was my point.
Yeah, that will be good. But at the same time, then there'll be a camps, only those kind of people. Like there are in Hindi cinema you have seen, there are studios which have their own permanent, but to get outsiders to get into it itself is very difficult. So they become a camp into themselves and they keep producing and increasing. So an outsider will have much more difficulty if they're not allowed to, if there's no other platform for them to make independent cinema, then it gets much more difficult also. So the challenges and, for both what you're saying. And stability is not one looks for really to come into a film industry, I think.
Kavitha, do you think that when you make a film as a woman, there is some essential difference that you bring in as a woman to a film? Or, because a lot of women filmmakers say we don't want to be known as women filmmakers, it's a kind of marginalization, it's asking for special category, etc. What do you think? Do you think it's important to assert your self as a woman, or would you say you'd prefer to just...
I think on the screen we do bring in, especially if she's a sensitive filmmaker, she will bring her own nuances onto the screen while shooting, or the atmosphere of the shooting behind the screens as well. But as a filmmaker, finally when the movie is done and it's screened, I wouldn't want to be known as a woman filmmaker, but I would like the film to talk for itself. And hopefully in the nuances, if somebody finds out it's a woman, like today we were seeing the short films and all that, we had no clue whether it was a woman or a man director. Finally when we went back to visit, we know it's a woman who's done it. So that kind of thing should be subtly it should come, but I don't think somebody like Ghatak or Satyajit or Girish Kasoli have been so sensitive towards women's issue as well. So it depends, including my father would write a column called Nilu actually, and in a pseudonym of Nilu. Most girls thought it was a girl who was writing it. It was not. So I'm sure there's a female and sensitive side towards every man. If he's brought up that way, I should mention that. If he's not, there'll be this absolutely patriarchal and male and ego and those kind of things which are existing in men. But if you're brought up in a sensitive way with the parents, bring them up, men up properly, I'm sure there's a women's side towards them. And for me, there's also a male side towards me, I would say. So but depending on the balance of what you want. But I've seen like Margarita with a straw, for instance. That's something which a woman brought out so beautifully. I don't know if a man would have brought it so sensitively, or lipstick under my burqa. These kind of cinema which is coming from women. There's an innate women chop over it, stamp over it, which I would appreciate it. I mean, more and more filmmakers coming in.
So with that...
Madam, one more question.
Yeah.
What one gathers is that every avant-garde brand of filmmakers are troublemakers. Take the case of Jean-Luc Godard or Louis Buñuel. They're all untraveled paths. Are they gone to the blind alleys of life? And do you endorse the view that I recently read, life is a complex, random algorithm? Do you endorse that view?
Yes,
Because
I think so.
we are all troublemakers, messy,
Yeah.
erratic.
Yes, I think it's complex. In fact, somebody, to make a lighter statement of that, somebody was telling me, invited me to a premiere of a horror film. I said, I don't see horror films because life is a horror for me most times. Though it's beautiful, my life is beautiful with my daughter and everything is very beautiful, but somehow I feel you go and get scared on seeing a horror film. I don't. That's one genre I don't see or I don't want to intend making ever. So it's as you said, yeah, life is complex, but the beauty is in handling it the way, and being sincere about it. If you look at all the simple instance of my sister being killed like that, I would feel horrified. Till then it happened elsewhere. It didn't, of course it bothered me. When the Volker it happened, it bothered me. Pansari it happened. Then Kalburgi, which was closer home, it bothered me. But in my own house when it happened, that's when you realize that the world is sick, the world is horrible, it's getting violent.
These are all happening because of, it is a random software, life.
Random what, sir?
Random software, algorithm.
Okay.
That is why these are all happening.
Yeah.
It is an erratic, messy and fussy algorithm.
So,
Yes, but in spite of that, life is also beautiful, and the way, it's in spite of all that, I still say life is not messy if it can be clear, beautiful, lucid. I would say there's a hope, otherwise we can't live like that thinking it's a mess. Yeah.
yes. So, I think we'll continue the discussions. So,
With other people, not with
yeah, no, of course with you also, with the films which are going to be made by you may talk with us again. So keep on making films, and as we have already said, the world, the country is intolerant. We are making films, struggling. There are women, there are Dalits, there are sensible people struggling to live in the world. But as you said, let's definitely try to be messy. Let's do something. Let's make films. And thank you so much. We're waiting for the next film.
Thank you, Archana. Thank you, IFDSK. I got to see some wonderful films. Thank you, Beena. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.